And our first story, the Supreme Court has dismissed an application seeking to refrain Parliament from considering the controversial CI-78 document to legalize the creation of the 45 new constituencies in the country. An Accra-based businessman, Ransford France, wanted the Supreme Court to restrain Parliament from considering CI-78, which has already been laid and is expected to mature on October 3. Until the final determination of suit he has filed in July this year against the creation of the new constituencies is heard. Trial Judge Justice Julius Ansah has fixed Thursday, October 4 for the hearing of the substantive case on the CI-78 before it.
According to the trial judge, the ruling does not mean the Electoral Commission can go ahead with the creation of the 45 constituencies since the substantive case was still in court. Explaining the reasons for dismissing the case, the judge cited a precedent, Tufo versus the Attorney General, in which it was ruled that the court cannot interfere on issues that were before Parliament. He noted the court can only do so if there was evidence to prove that Parliament was interfering in constitutional matters. The judge, however, noted he does not think Parliament, by sitting on the controversial CI-78, was interfering with the Constitution. Justice Ansah also stated that for him to grant the injunction application, the plaintiff must show beyond reasonable doubt that he will suffer serious implication if the injunction is not granted. Per the facts of the case, the Electoral Commission and the Attorney General were able to prove to the trial judge that they were likely to suffer from serious constitutional breach if the injunction was granted. Earlier, Attorney General Dr. Benjamin Kumbo had argued that there was no clear indication that Parliament had committed an illegality, adding that the laying of CI-78 was of public interest and was also time-bound because there would be serious constitutional crisis if the time was not met. According to Dr. Kumbo, it was not clear how much the applicant will be inconvenienced as against the national inconvenience that would be occasioned when Parliament was restrained. The Supreme Court thus upheld the EC and Attorney General's argument and threw out the application for injunction. The dismissal of the application means the substantive case filed by Ransford France challenging the power of the EC to go ahead with the creation of new constituencies without first laying before Parliament a constitutional instrument indicating clearly the mechanism, formula or modalities can now be heard. The trial judge slated hearing for Thursday, October 4, a day after Parliament is expected to pass the CI in contention.
The Member of Parliament for Menchia has described as discriminatory moves by the Electoral Commission to register Ghanaians on diplomatic missions and Ghanaian students studying abroad to enable them vote in the upcoming polls in December. Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh is also challenging the PMDC Law 284 cited by the EC to support the exercise because he says the law has been replaced by the Representation of the People Amendment Bill, which was passed into law in 2006.
PMDC law has also been amended. It does no longer exist. So how can you go ahead on a constitutional exercise on a non-existent law? Amendment says Ghanaian residents abroad. The law, PMDC Law 284, Section 8, that has been repealed, said Ghanaians working in diplomatic missions and Ghanaians working in international organizations. I didn't even see students, but it had been stretched to include Ghanaian students on government scholarship. I'm saying that that law has been repealed. It has been repealed as far back as 2006 by ROPAL. And when ROPAL was implemented, the law was passed, it was said that the EC must publish a constitutional instrument to tell Ghanaians how it is going to embark on registration of Ghanaians abroad. So it was well within EC's right, a remit, to come up with a constitutional obligation instrument that says that, oh, I cannot do everything at every time, at any time. So I'm staging it over a certain period, right? So that in that exercise, you are not being seen to be discriminatory or capricious. My opinion is that if you say then you are going to Washington to register Ghanaians in diplomatic missions in Washington, then you should make an invitation to all Ghanaians who are entitled to be registered to so come to the diplomatic mission and register.
Citing the Commission's compliance with some rulings of the Supreme Court, such as registering prisoners to vote in the December polls, the Menchia MP cautioned the Electoral Commission against picking and choosing the laws to implement. He says the New Patriotic Party will petition the EC over this matter.
EC cannot say we are basing our things on law, and then you pick and choose which law you want. I have to urge my national chairman to send a petition to Mr. Afarijan.
As in your party's national chairman?
Yes, to send a petition to Mr. Afarijan to tell him that he has to look at the law he's implying, because the letter they wrote to the parties, or the letter they gave us, shows that they are using PMDC law 284, section 8, which has been repealed. So that is even wrong, right? That letter is even wrong, because there is nothing like that gives you any power to do discriminatory registration. And don't forget that since the Supreme Court has ruled on this matter and the law is clear, one person can put all that exercise in jeopardy. One Ghanaian who lives in London, who is not afforded that entitlement, opportunity to register, can put the whole thing in spanner.
Right, so we put in an effort to get the PNC presidential candidate Hassan Ayariga to gather his thoughts on this ROPO matter the EC has brought up in registering just Ghanaians on diplomatic missions and those studying abroad. But before we do that, or while we try to get him on the telephone line, let's move on to some other stories where a new group calling itself National Youth for John Mahama, with the aim of canvassing for and mobilizing the youth to vote for His Excellency John Mahama, has been formed. The group says it does not care about which political party ticket John Mahama stands for, but will campaign for him because they love him as a person.
According to the national coordinator of the group, Abu Karim, the group will do its best to ensure that John Mahama wins the elections come December 2012.
Even for now, we have not even seen the president. We've never seen any political party. It is our personal contributions. Even if John Mahama should be in MPP today, we'll vote for him. We'll go in for him. If he should be in CPP or PPP or UNDP, whatever political party, because we want to let people know that the man is appealing to everybody. The love for John Mahama, not for NDC. If John Mahama should cross carpet today and join even the last party in Ghana here, we'll go in for him.
He again debunked allegations that the group was formed to counter AFAC's intended demonstration against the EC, adding they will do their best to make Ghanaians allow state institutions perform their duties according to the laws that establish them.
What we are saying is that if AFAC is trying to disturb the EC, the judiciary, we will counteract them, but ours is not to disturb them. We are not even talking of AFAC alone. We are also talking about AFAC in any other political party, religious groups that are coming out. They should leave the institutions to do whatever the Constitution asks them to do. Why do we put on unnecessary pressure that the EC is saying, I can do it? Then what is your beef about that? He says he can do it. Wait for him.
Abu Karim says the group is funded solely by its members and not the NDC, with representatives in all the 230 constituencies in the country.
Yet another group. I'm curious about what happened to the groups that were formed prior to the death of late President John Evans Atta Mills. But we're still making efforts to get Hassan Ayariga on the telephone lines to speak to him on the EC's implementation of ROPO. Meanwhile, the President John Dramani Mahama began his 2012 campaign today with a tour of the Greater Accra region and a call on supporters of the National Democratic Congress to avoid voting skirt and blouse in the forthcoming general elections. The president said an overwhelming vote for the NDC without correspondent vote for the party's parliamentary candidates would not be the best, as the candidates would fail to make the mark in the House of Legislature. He stressed that both the executive and the legislative worked hand in hand to ensure development, and therefore voting skirt and blouse would be detrimental to the development agenda. We have on the phone line presidential correspondent Gifty Andwa Pia, who's been on tour today with the president across the capital city. Good evening, Gifty.
Hello, Tomini. Good evening.
Now, where has the president been, if you could tell us?
Well, let me just quickly say that earlier on at the Castle, he inaugurated the Private Sector Development Council, one of the things that he promised in his policy statement. And then the outgoing Italian ambassador also called on him to bid him farewell and asked for Ghanaian support for Italy as they want to be non-permanent members on the UN Security Council. But today, the president he started at Osei, where he visited the Osei Palace, and he spoke to Ni King Kadowona, and then went to speak to Ni Owo. And all along his tour, he's been telling the people to consider the things that NDC has done over the past 3.5 years, so to speak, and consider them as deserving of a second chance. From Osei, he went to Asalam Down, where he spoke. Going to Asalam Down, he went to something interesting. Really happened. He went to the NDC headquarters, where we saw some members, the MPP headquarters, where we saw some of the MPP members waving at him, and we thought that was a sign of mature democracy. And then he went to Asalam Down. He addressed the people. He told them the same thing: not to vote skirt and blouse, but to ensure that they have majority in parliament, so that the president's work would be easy. He went on to the Adabraka market, Odona market, where the market women enthusiastically met him and told him that they were in support of him, but then they wanted some shares in the market. He told them that the mayor was working on that. And then he went to the Odona garage and told them the same thing. Then his final point of call was to do in Accra. So all along, all the president has been telling them to consider what the NDC has done over the years as deserving of a second chance,
right,
and to vote him back into power.
Right. Gifted, before I let you go, you remember when he was on his thank you tour as well, there were so many questions as to why he was taking a thank you tour, and they said it was a campaign tour in disguise. Really, how different is this one from the thank you tour he went on, especially when it comes to message?
Well, Kemeni, from a very personal perspective, the thank you tour appeared to have attracted a bigger crowd, so to speak, and I really can't explain that. But on the thank you tour, he appeared to have. The crowd was crazy. The crowd was so ecstatic, and it was such a huge crowd. What's different with this is the language, the things that he's been saying. On the thank you tour, he kept telling the people that, well, people were saying he should thank the people of Ghana on radio and TV.
Right. So from your observation, really, they are two different tours then.
They're not different, but the difference here is the things that he's been saying. The first one, he kept telling them this is not a campaign, and that this is to thank you for supporting us when the president died. And then this time, he's saying that we are here to campaign.
Right.
Your vote. That's the difference.
We might have to leave it here for the sake of time. You're still watching Joy News at 8. We're still putting in efforts to get Hassan Ayarga, PMDC presidential candidate for the 2012 general elections. We want to gather his thoughts on the EC's part implementation of ROPAL, which will allow some Ghanaians abroad to really take part in the December elections. Stay on.